Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we'll be doing a PC build which you can put together yourself for around about £600, which gives you the ultimate bang per buck. Interested? Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so we all know that at the moment PC prices are, somewhat mental. So we don't want to be spending ridiculous amounts of money and buying things which are possibly overpriced at the moment. So on the market at the moment there are some actually pretty good finds which you can get both in the used and in the new market, which will really help you build the best PC you can for your money. Now we've set a budget of approximately £600, depending where you buy your items from and obviously stock availability, etc, bargains, whatever then you may pay slightly more, you may pay slightly less. So take the figures that I'm going to give you as a ballpark figure, but you should be able to find most of these components in and around the same price. So without further ado, let's get on and introduce the parts. So let's start off with the heart of the machine. This is the Ryzen 1700x. This is a 8-core, 16-thread part, and was part of the original launch of the 1000 series Ryzen processors. Yes, by today's standards it is certainly showing its age a little bit, but this PC is going to be designed to be used for both gaming, editing, basically a general workhorse, but without costing an absolute fortune. You try getting yourself a 8-core 16-thread processor for £130 on the open market right now, and I think you're going to struggle. Obviously, if you wanted to, you could sort this out with something similar. We've taken some of our prices from places like eBay and CEX here in the UK, so obviously again, your prices may differ. You could, if you want to, sort this out with something like the Ryzen 5 3600, which will be a good replacement. You will pay probably somewhere between £30 and £40 more at the moment, and obviously you'll get better IPC performance, that kind of thing. But personally for me, I've used this chip pretty much solidly now for about the last 4 or 5 years, and it's a great chip. It really does plow through the tasks, whether it's video editing, gaming, whatever it is. It's just a really good processor and it's served me very well, but it's time for it to have a new home. So we're going to put it into this. This is the ASUS ROG Strix B450 F Gaming 2. Now the reason why we've gone with this board is ultimately for compatibility. If you're building a PC, whether you're keeping it for yourself or perhaps whether you're selling it on after, you want the best of stability. So when we're looking at the first generation Ryzen and we're talking stability, obviously the first lot of chipsets, the 300 series, they had their faults, and the X370 was okay, but very hard to get hold of these days. With the B450, especially these enhanced versions, which are available on the market now, such as MSI's Max versions and the new kind of version 2 versions of most ASUS boards, these give you a really good foundation. So you can put one of these in your system. They won't cost an absolute fortune. This one at the moment in the UK retails brand new from anywhere between £80 to £100, but also gives you the flexibility of having great VRMs. So if you do want to upgrade in the future to either a Ryzen 3000 series or even a 5000 series, this board is going to have you covered up to some pretty heavy duty processors. So with the great VRM on here, great price. Also it has addressable RGB, which we always like to see. So for me, this is the board to go for. Next thing we're going to choose is our RAM. So here we've got some DDR4 3200. This is the XPG Spectrix RAM, so it's got plenty of RGB on it. This is DDR4 3200 CL16 RAM, so pretty much a sweet spot for this type of processor. 3200 might be a push for some early 1000 series, but I know for a fact this one runs absolutely fine with it, so that's great. Again, 16 gigs of RAM is pretty much, I wouldn't say the minimum we're looking at these days, but it's the sensible solution. Now I picked these up on the used market for about £50 from actually one of our Discord members, so thanks very much, Marshmallow Cookie. Again, £50, this was a particularly good deal, but you can find other RAM sticks out there, such as Corsair's LPX on eBay, Amazon, and also CX, places like that. 16 gigs you can pick up for somewhere, well, crazy prices, somewhere between £40 and £70, depending where you go. So yeah, this was a particularly good bargain. I did have to buy the other 16 gig kit as well, so yeah, swings and roundabouts. Also as well, when it comes to the RAM, obviously, because this is the B450 chipset and the processor we're using, DDR4 3200 is that pretty much the sweet spot for that particular chipset and for this processor. But again, if we want to use a Ryzen 5 3600 with it, runs equally as well with CL16 3200 RAM. So yeah, it's a really good package, a really good platform for a bit of expandability, and we can mix and match out things pretty easily. Also as well, obviously, if you wanted to ditch the graphics card, which we're going to be talking about later, and you wanted to go with APU, The B450 chipset is probably one of the most, I would say, satisfactory and compatible chipsets on the market right now, pretty much across the board for all of the APU-based chips. So, also something to bear in mind. Now, obviously, keeping a Ryzen 7 1700X cool is not an easy task, and even with its stock included Wraith Prism cooler, temperatures still do get a little bit on the high side. So what we've decided to do is, rather than use the stock cooler, we're going to go with a aftermarket cooler. And this particular one is the Snowman MT-4. You can find out more about this one. We did a full review on it, which you can check out up here, and also various mounting options, etc. But for the money, this is a great option. Now, obviously, you can swap this out for things like the Cooler Master 212 Evo, maybe even Arctic's Freezer 34. That is also a very good shout. This one costs, at the moment, on AliExpress and also on Amazon, places like that, you can pick these up for anywhere between about £16 to £25. So if we say £20 for a CPU cooler, I think we've done really well. This is the twin fan model with 4 heat pipes and should tame the beast quite easily. Next, we're going to talk about some more storage. Now, we've decided to go with possibly not the most obvious choice. This is the TC Sunbow. This is a 1TB SSD in the SATA configuration, so we're not using M.2 or NVMe drive in this machine. Possibly you could do. Prices at the moment have been tumbling again. We've seen the P2 drives from Corsair recently hitting all-time lows of around about £60 for a 1TB drive. It is the P2 series, so you're looking at QLC and no onboard cache, so yeah, it can get a little bit bogged down at times. But this drive I've had here for ages actually. We bought 3 of them at one point, so it seemed like a good time to use it. And realistically, for gaming tasks, for Windows use, and for video editing, this sort of drive is absolutely fine. You've got data throughputs around about 500 megabytes per second, so yeah, it's no slouch, and certainly 100 times better than a mechanical hard drive, so this is what we've gone with. Power supply wise, yeah, power supply is always going to be the bone of contention. Now, in our budget, we've put aside a value of around about £40. Now, I've actually chosen to go with the Cylon 700 watt. This is an 80 plus rated power supply. It's not brilliant, but it will certainly get the job done. The graphics card we're going to be using isn't going to strain this particularly. It's going to be absolutely fine for that processor as well, and we may even have a little bit of headroom for going forward, although as we go forward, potentially processors and GPUs for that matter may actually become more energy efficient, so therefore reducing the load on the power supply. Now, obviously, if you want to, you can swap this out for other models in and around the same sort of price point. So we've had a few recently. We've had the Cooler Master 550 gold rated one. We've also had the EVGA 550 rated gold as well. So if you're looking for a little bit more efficiency out of your power supply, then potentially those are options. Also as well, recently we had a crazy deal on the Sharkoon gold rated 650 watt power supply, which was about £20. Now, I haven't tested that fully yet, so I don't want to put it into a system which potentially I might be kind of selling on or using for some other purpose. I don't know what it's going to be like, so I want to test it first to make sure everything is okay before we stick it in the system. So that's the power supply. Love it or hate it. This comes in pretty cheaply, around about £30–35, so 700 watts. I don't think you can go too far wrong. Again, it is 80 plus rated. Flame me in the comments. And last of all, let's introduce the graphics card. Now, for me at the moment, the GTX range, especially the 1070 cards at the moment here in the UK, are particularly good value. These cards are great. I've done video editing on this, I've done gaming on it, even at 1440p. Yes, you may have to reduce some of the settings slightly or lower your expectations in terms of frame rate, but this is a solid workhorse. 8GB card, the GTX 1070, especially this EVGA one, the SC model, just does really, really well. You've got a nice backplate on there, got some really decent cooling on there, just a really good all-round card. Now, you can pick these up in the UK anywhere between around about 200 and 250. This one actually cost me about 225, so yeah, somewhere in the middle of that. And at the moment, CEX, places like that, are also doing various versions. They kind of do a generic GTX 1070, you could get anything. So this is actually something that you can actually go out, pick up one, and make a build. When it comes to cases, we've gone for something possibly not quite as traditional as normal. We've gone with the Ionz Taiyo. This is a great little case, costs around about £35–40 depending where you're shopping. You've got 2 massive 200mm fans on the front. We've got RGB lighting, really nice room to work in, nice sturdy case as well. So again, if you are planning to perhaps sell the PC on after, you know that it's not going to be one of those things that where you're shipping it, it's going to get damaged in transit. It is a very solid case. And also, it's got a lot of room for building, again, future. If you're looking at putting more drives in, possibly a bigger graphics card, maybe some water cooling components, then certainly you have got the ability to do that. And actually, it seems like a really nice case to build in, as we will find out very, very shortly. So there we go, that's the parts introduced. Approximate prices, we're looking at the moment, I've totaled it up, I think it's about 640. So we were aiming somewhere between 600 and 700, so 640 seems about right. Obviously again, depending when I bought these and where, etc, etc, the prices are going to fluctuate, so don't take it as granted that these are the exact prices. We will be putting some affiliated links in the video description, also some links to eBay, etc. So some of the items that we found which have been particularly good value for money, you'll be able to grab those for yourselves. Again, depending on what country you're in, etc, etc, your mileage may actually vary. So that's enough waffle, let's get on and actually build this thing. Okay, so there we go. There is the PC, and from what you've seen from the B-roll shots already from the build, it didn't go entirely to plan, as I didn't expect, I'll be honest with you. As I said in the kind of the intro and going through the parts lists, pretty much everything was selected purely for compatibility's sake, which I thought I had nailed, but for some bizarre reason, it just doesn't perform as I thought it would, which is really bizarre. Now, you'll probably see some footage come up. I'll do some gameplay benchmarks, and you can see I've got the NVIDIA software running in the side there, so you can see things like frame rates, minimum lows, all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't take it as gospel, because there is definitely something a little bit screwy going on with this system, and I still haven't quite figured it out. So let's go through some of the things whilst just looking at some of that footage and some of the gameplay, etc. And we'll talk about some of the things that we've actually changed out. So the first thing we did, obviously, we did the system build as per you saw in the little kind of montage there. It didn't seem to perform right, and I couldn't quite work out what it was. So the first thing I thought is possibly it's down to the cooler. So out with the cooler, and we replaced that with the Arctic Freezer 34, which is an awesome cooler and is a little bit better than the Snowman MT-4, and that was reflected really well in temperatures. Actually, we managed to drop the temperatures anywhere between sort of 10 to 15 degrees in some instances. This thing was getting to 75 degrees under some of the benchmarks, and running just Cinebench with hardware monitor, checking the temps, yeah, we were hitting 75 degrees on the CPU, which really I wasn't quite expecting. I figured it would stay under that, but yep, it is an older CPU, not quite as energy efficient, etc, etc. So anyway, we swapped this out, and that's kept temperatures well under control. We're maxing out now, we're in about 62, 63 degrees C, which for a Ryzen 7 1700X, 8 cores, 16 threads, yeah, it's pretty decent, so we can live with that. The other thing I tried was various power supplies. I was wondering if the Cylon 700 watt was kind of maybe hampering our results slightly. Now, actually the results, Cinebench was getting around about 600 points less than what it should do. Now, I know in the grand scheme of things that isn't a huge deal, and we do quite often see processors, exactly the same processors from the same family, exactly the same model, with the same motherboard, performing drastically different. It does happen. But I've had this processor for many, many years, and I've tested it under various different circumstances, and I'm pretty sure when I tested it last under Cinebench, granted it was probably a few years ago, I'm sure it was within the norms of what Cinebench says it should be. So to drop that many points seemed a little bit on the bizarre side. So anyway, I tried a different power supply. In fact, I tried 4 different power supplies, 3 or 4 power supplies regardless, of varying qualities. Gold rated 650 watts, 550 watts, the Cooler Master one, etc, etc. And pretty much every single result was almost the same. Went through the BIOS, changed as many settings as I possibly could. It just doesn't seem to want to boost to where it should do. This processor, I'm sure, all core load should boost to somewhere like 3.7, maybe even 3.8 if you're lucky, with reasonable cooling, which obviously we've got. But it doesn't seem to want to go there. It seems to just hover around the kind of 3.5 mark. The cores do get to 3.9 in PBO or XFR or whichever it's using these days. And in general use, it actually seems fine, but it's just in benchmarking, it didn't seem to do what it was supposed to. So the next thing was to take a look at the graphics card. The graphics card was a used one. I picked up a pair of them for a pretty decent price, so I figured it'd be a good idea to take that apart. There is going to be a video actually coming up on that, on how to disassemble your graphics card and clean paste pads, etc. So stay tuned for that one. And actually that made a great difference as well. In things like CSGO, originally we were kind of in the somewhere between 120 to maybe 200 frames per second. It was really kind of jumping up and down all over the place. So yeah, it seemed there was many things going on which were all wrong at the same time, which is really confusing when you're trying to troubleshoot. But anyway, so we cleaned out the CPU, we cleaned out the GPU, new cooler, new paste on the GPU, and yeah, things were considerably better, and we're getting towards those kind of scores, and with a manual overclock, I can easily hit what it's meant to hit. So yeah, I'm not too sure what's going on with XFR or precision boost overclocking. Certainly need to look at that in a little bit more depth as time goes on. I'm not going to go into it in this particular video. That maybe we'll come back to if I actually find out what the magic reason was, then I will let you guys know. I'm hoping it's not silicon degradation, which is a thing with Ryzen processors, especially this processor has been used on an ASUS board for many, many years. And we all know that ASUS boards like to aggressively give a bit of voltage, which is not good long term. So anyway, keep posted, we'll update you as far as that goes. Anyway, the next thing was the noise. Now, the 200mm fans, to begin with, they look great, but for me, I was testing it. I had it literally on the desk here, pretty much where it is now when I was doing tests on my monitor there. And the fans were driving me slightly insane. It wasn't a horrible pitch, it was a low pitch, but it was just that drone. And again, I was right next to it, so I didn't want it to get to the point where if I do sell the PC, the person who inherits it turns around to me at one point and says, oh, PC's really nice, Mike, but it's a little bit on the loud side. Can we do something with the fans? At which point, we're heading into a whole world of trouble because they're static speed fans, as we pointed out in the video review, which if you haven't checked out already, you can check out up here for the Ionz Taiyo case. And actually, it's a really nice little case. It's actually dropped down even lower in price now to £35 plus postage, which is absolutely phenomenal. We'll put some links in the video description. 35 quid for this case is just an absolute steal, it really is. But having said that, you may find that you want to change out the fans. So I changed out the fans for a set which we got sent in by Ugly Bob, which is the Movivo, or Movivo, well, some word I can't pronounce. You'll see it in the B-roll. Work it out for yourselves. But anyway, so we put those in, as you can see now, and these are actually really nice little fans. But the sad thing was, because of the way this case is manufactured, originally we had this kind of behind there, which separated the two fans. So obviously we had to get the tools out, cut this out, and actually I think it's made a pretty decent job of it. And actually it looks very similar now to the Lian 215. What do you think? I actually compared it with that in the review, and I think it looks even more like it now. So we could, if we want to, we could put the 200mm fan back in, put it back to the stock configuration. It isn't going to be a problem. It's just a bit of a shame we had to put these fans in. We have got a little bit more control now, so we've got this little handy dandy remote control, so we can adjust the fan speeds manually if we want to. And also now we can synchronize the RGB a little bit with the rest of the board, which is a little bit nicer, although not the ideal solution. I would have rather put in something like the up here fans in here, the fan set, for cost saving measures. If I was really going to be going to town on this and possibly keeping it for myself and maybe having it as a star PC, then I would really love to put those in-wing fans in there. The three 140s at the front, two 120s at the top, and another 120 in the rear. I think that would be absolutely smashing, but sadly that isn't to be, but I am planning to do that at some point, so stay tuned for that also. So anyway, try and make a long story short, which is very difficult for me to do, as you probably know if you're a regular viewer of the channel. But essentially, we've got to this point where, price-wise, we're kind of in the, I would say probably about 670, which is starting to creep up a little bit. It really is. The value is there. It plays games really nicely. There's no issues there. Cyberpunk runs like a dream. It's under 60 frames per second with the settings I had, which you've probably already seen. But other games, CSGO and all that kind of stuff, runs absolutely fine. The GTX 1070 8GB is still a fantastic card. And in today's climate where graphics cards are either extremely scarce or ridiculously overpriced, I still put my hand on my heart and say that the GTX 1070 is pretty much the best value proposition on the market right now. Whether it's from Marketplace or CEX, or maybe just from a friend, just inherit it from a friend, it goes for a really good price. And talking of prices, we should tally up now where we're at price-wise. So let's break down the prices. So currently as it stands, I'm going to round prices up or down slightly anyway. So the case, £35. Motherboard, 80. We've got the CPU, which is about 130. Now with the CPU, we could have changed things out after looking at CEX again. Obviously I had this processor, so it's kind of irrelevant, but if you're thinking of doing a similar sort of build, so there are actually quite a lot of options around the same sort of price point. So £120 gets you a Ryzen 5 2600, £130 gets you a Ryzen 7 1700X, and if you want to add another £10 to that, you can get the Ryzen 7 2700X at CEX at the moment. £140, that's a lot of processor for the money. Another £10 gets you a Ryzen 5 3600, and yeah, you can kind of guess the rest. It goes up incrementally. So depending on what they've got in stock and what is available, or maybe you want to drop into a store near you, then yeah, there's a lot of processors on the market right now. So yeah, maybe not so many graphics cards, but processors, there seems to be a pretty decent abundance of them. So anyway, RAM wise, again, we picked up this for £50. So thank you to our Discord member, as we said earlier, for that one. Also the SSD, £65. You could probably do a better deal, maybe put, I did say earlier in the video, it was the Corsair P2. Of course, it's not, it's the Crucial P2 drive. That is currently reduced to £60. So we paid £65 for the 1TB SSD, the TC Sunbow. Then we've got the cooler itself, which originally I factored in for the Snowman. So that was about £20, whereas this is about £35. So we've got to add about another £15 on there. Sorry, I'm looking at my list as well here. PSU, we've said £40 is pretty much what we've budgeted for. Now, I pay slightly less than that. I paid about £35 for the Cylon. So yeah, again, if you take it all into consideration, with the GPU costing us $225, which again, you can actually buy on the used market for $225. You can get it from CEX. There's been a few listed there recently. Although with CEX, you're kind of gambling a little bit because you don't know exactly what model you're going to get. It's just they list for GTX 1070 8GB and you get whatever there is. So you could get a Founders or reference card, or you could get something not quite as nice. Anyway, so with all that totaled up, we're looking at around about £665, £670, give or take. So again, you could save a few quid here and there, maybe with the motherboard, maybe with the, well, not with the case, that'd be very hard to do. The fans, you could stick with the standard fans, and obviously that's going to take about £25 off, maybe £20 off, that sort of thing. Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility in there, so depending on what your budget is, if you're closer to 600, there's things you can do. If you're closer to 700, then it gives you a little bit more flexibility. But overall, I think in terms of the look, the spec, and the overall kind of compatibility and the potential to move forward with it as well, we could, if we wanted to, when funds become available, take out that CPU, put in a Ryzen 7 3800X. It'll work in there quite happily. A 5600X if you wanted to, but they're a little bit on the expensive side, but you certainly could do. And again, graphics card wise, there's not really much limiting you. It is a B450 chipset, so we're limited to PCI Express Gen 3. But in the grand scheme of things, when you're doing benchmarks and playing games, you're unlikely to notice the difference currently between PCI Express Gen 4 and Gen 3 in terms of actually physical gameplay. Benchmarking wise, yeah, you may show up a few percent here and there. I think that's by the by. Realistically, I think this is a fantastic machine. It looks really nice, and yeah, I think it's worked out pretty nicely. It's got all the bells and whistles, got all the lights on there, which all the kids love these days, and it's got a nice little remote control, which is always one of those things which helps sell a PC. So anyway, I've rabbited it on way too long. Please do let me know what you think about this one in the comments section below. Let me know what also you would possibly put together for somewhere in the region of £600 to £700. On our Discord chat server, we do actually have a section dedicated to PC part picker builds, so if maybe you want to put together a list in and post it on there for us all to analyse and maybe take it on board, then please do so. The links will be in the video description, as will links for all the parts used in this build, and obviously links for us personally, so if you want to get in touch, send us an email, whatever, you're more than welcome to do so. So anyway, this has been the 600 stroke 650 stroke 675 stroke £700 build. I've been Mike, this is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.